Welcome to Retaining Purpose, a podcast about staying anchored to what matters most, especially when the pace of life and leadership picks up. I am your host, Randy Volk. Today's guest is someone who's been quietly shaping how businesses operate behind the scenes for years. Bryan Bates is a strategist, systems thinker, and builder at heart, with a strong track record of helping companies leverage IT, integration, and automation to simplify the complex and drive meaningful results. Our own relationship with Bryan began when Grassroots Resource Optimization stepped in to help us automate our reporting processes. What struck us right away was not just his technical ability, but his capacity to see the bigger picture, how data, systems, and people all connect. That initial project turned into a deeper partnership, and Bryan is now helping us at Grassroots Landscaping evaluate and optimize our current IT usage, reporting structure, and internal workflows. His work is rooted in a clear philosophy. Technology should serve people, not the other way around. And in a world that often overwhelms businesses with options and complexity, Bryan has a unique gift for cutting through the noise and bringing clarity. Today, we're digging into his journey, how he got into this space, what he's seeing in the world of IT integrations and automations, and how small to mid-sized businesses can embrace these tools to become more agile, more efficient, and ultimately more impactful. We'll also talk about where AI is helping, where it might be hurting, and some of the exciting projects Bryan is working on right now. So let's get to it. Bryan, welcome to Retaining Purpose.
Thanks for having me here, Randy. I'm glad to be here.
Bryan, how did you get started in the world of IT automations and integrations?
I fell into it after a pretty long time, about almost 25 years working in the geomatics industry, land surveying. And when I was ready for a change out of that, I was looking at what next, and I started to see a need with companies and how they handle projects and processes, and how a lot of them don't have access to the technology that helps to bring those to a more efficient state. So through a little bit of trial and error, some discovery, I started to stumble across some ways to leverage technology, automation, apps, dashboards, data management, those sorts of things that to help them out.
Yeah, very cool. And I know, we've had an opportunity to kind of dive into some of that stuff over the last 6-7 months. Was there a specific moment in your career? Like, I know you and I have talked enough about, you're a professional engineer, yep. And you also have your MBA. So, what did that look like to move from, that geomatics space and then end up in the business space? Because they're pretty different, right? Was there a defining moment that transitioned you across, or was it just something that organically took place?
Well, it took it wasn't a light bulb moment, but it took place over time. And as I worked in the geomatics industry and progressed into more senior levels of management, I understood that I didn't know enough about business in general. So what I did was I said, okay, this is as good a time as any as it is in life, and decided to go back to school and earn a master's of business administration degree. And that's eye-opening for anybody that has not been immersed in business from day one. You get to see so many different perspectives. Your cohort includes people from different areas of business. You get to see how different businesses have struggled with issues that, you can remember from your experience as well. And so that really helped open my eyes to the possibilities that are out there in terms of there's so much more beyond what I had seen so far.
Right. And so how long at what age did you go back to school to complete your MBA?
That was 7-8 years ago now. So okay. I was in my early 40s at the time.
So recently. Okay.
Yeah, not that long ago. And I'd say, I was probably kind of average or maybe slightly older than average for that kind of MBA program. But we had people from their late 20s to early 50s in there. It was quite a range. And that's part of the interesting part of it, is you get people from different perspectives working alongside you in those courses.
Right. No, absolutely. And it's interesting because, in that space, you now have the opportunity to take those years of experience that you had in work and now translate those into, something you can carry forward, right? That older student per se.
Well, it's important to have some of that perspective to be able to bounce off the theoretical material that you're getting from the professors and be able to reflect it with what you've seen, what you've done, what some of your colleagues have done, and it's probably more important then because you've had the experience, you've gotten the bruises yourself out in business, and then and now you're probably learning the right ways to do it after that.
Absolutely. And so, with that, so you're in the geomatics, you then go back to school, get your MBA, the IT side of things.
Yeah.
How did you like stumble into that kind of, right?
Well, in a way, it was always there.
Right.
So engineering education, IT is a big part of it. You're learning some programming, coding, that sort of thing. A lot of people in my age group grew up starting to fiddle with computers. Right. It was the
Don't
time. Don't
date yourself too much. Okay.
But it was the time when these things started to show up in homes more regularly. And so, there's that bit of love there. And working in the geomatics industry, very technological industry in general. When we think of surveying, we think, okay, you're outside and you're doing field work, but there's a lot of technology involved. And so this was kind of a natural evolution of the same things.
Yeah, that's cool. So is there a client or an industry that you're singularly focused in, or is it kind of just broad spectrum and kind of how do you pick and choose where you want to spend your time now?
Yeah, it's not a single industry. I think the ones that I've had the most fun with, and you'll hear me talk about fun a little bit more, is because I do this because I get, I get a charge out of it, is ones that work in professional services. So like engineering and land surveying, kind of close to that, or law, accounting, kind of those professional services businesses. A lot of my geomatics work took me into the construction realm a lot. So I understand a lot of the challenges that come with heavy civil construction and so on. So those sorts of industries, I think, I can put myself in the customer's shoes a little quicker than I could, say, with a manufacturing business.
Right.
But I wouldn't rule out working with a smaller manufacturer that was struggling with some of the same problems that I see with other businesses.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, a little bit of a plug for you. I've worked with several consultants over the years, right? And it can sometimes go well, sometimes go not so well. I think one of the struggles I've seen that I've experienced with consultants is they're very quick to come in and tell you what exactly it is you should be doing, but then give you very little template on how to actually execute on it, right? I've enjoyed our time working together because, when it comes to the technology side, which is something that I absolutely do not understand, being able to work with you and because you also have that business mindset, even the civil construction side, understanding tendering and everything, it's made a very easy a very difficult conversation for me quite easy, which is great. And it's a unique skill set that you bring to the table, right? Because I'm sure a lot of guys working in this space of IT integration and automation don't have a strong business background. These are guys usually very specifically focused on exactly this, correct?
Mm-hmm. And that's been the niche for the business, is there are some brilliant people working in this space that can do amazing technical things with the Microsoft stack or other technologies that are available out there. But really, the strength for Cogitact, my company, has been to bridge, people will call it business analysis, but it's more than that. It's really deep understanding of where those businesses are at, where they're going, and how that relates to, a technological solution and how it gets provided.
Yeah, well, definitely one of the biggest challenges for small, medium enterprises, right? SMEs, where it's easy to want to do these things. It's really hard to understand how to execute on these things.
And it used to be, until relatively recently, it was out of reach.
Right.
Some of the stuff that we're able to do now for small, medium-sized businesses, you needed an internal IT team. It was for that large 1,000-person company that had dedicated experts in-house to do that. But the technology has changed to the point where, hey, we can bring a lot of these same things to a business of even just a few people if it makes sense to help them with their next step in evolution.
Yeah, which is great, because that's, we all hear the stories about how small and medium businesses, they're the ones that are really driving the economy, right? We hear that all the time. So it is nice as an owner of a small, medium business. It's nice to know that some of these things are now out there and achievable and reachable, as opposed to just, pie in the sky. The big guys get to do it, but we don't, right? Mm-hmm. Are you seeing small and medium businesses get more excited about it, or are they still kind of lacking of an understanding?
Yeah, it depends a little bit on the industry that you're interacting with, but definitely there is a lack of knowledge about what is available out there. So companies are getting hit with ads around things like AI, or you should, the modern workplace is a concept that gets thrown around a lot, and it's abstract, difficult for everybody to understand or what it means to them.
Yeah.
So, to be able to bring that to small and medium-sized businesses, but in a way that makes sense for them, I think is, there's a need for that, a big need out there.
Yeah, for sure. And we're going to touch on the AI aspect of it a little bit later. That's one of a bit of a friction point for me right now, because I think AI is something that's really promoted as kind of we can solve all your problems with AI. Build a website in 90 seconds. And I'm sure you can do that, but at the same time, I do believe we have to be a little bit cautious in how that's all used. But we'll get into that a little bit later. So with the industries you're working in right now, you like the professional aspects. I know you're working with a law firm, I believe, out of Ontario, and now you're working with us in kind of both the construction and technology side with the two businesses. Are you seeing similar challenges across industries when it comes to implementing some of these integrations and automations?
So the exact things they need are going to vary a bit from company to company, but a lot of the same challenges come up again and again. So, some of the ones that I'll trip across regularly will be things like people don't necessarily have the info they need to do the next task right in front of them. They got to go looking for it instead of having it available right at that moment. Or something that it might take 10, 15, 30 clicks to go through. They're doing it again and again when really they don't have to, and they just don't know how to get out of that trap. So things like that occur again and again, but there can be a lot of different solutions to that.
It's funny, the gentleman that you're working with out in Ontario, I was speaking to him, and when I asked him kind of the same question, what challenges are you finding internally? And his number one response was people. Because old habits die hard, right? So, he's investing into this, really lean and mean system. But he said the minute somebody finds out that maybe a link in the cog is broken, right? Instead of saying, hey, this is a broken process, we need to figure out how to fix it, they find the workaround, and then they just integrate the workaround into their daily work habits. And he finds out about it later where he's like, well, why didn't you just say it was broken? So, how do people play such an active role in, the success or limitation of the work that you do?
Oh yeah, it's vital. And that's a good example of one thing that can happen when, people are involved. But when it comes to automation, working with data, we're generally asking people to change what they do somehow. And it might be a relatively small change, or we might be asking them to make some really big shifts in how they work. And so how we approach that is going to determine whether this is the majority of people are going to go, okay, I can see the benefit, I'll go along with that, or no, I hate this, I'm going to resist. Even if they don't do it loudly, they might do it quietly and hope that,
it just goes away.
That it might go away.
Yeah.
So it's important to, while we're implementing, to make sure that people understand the why behind it.
Right.
Here's what it means for them. It's not to say, things like this will not affect your job in any way, because we can't make that promise, and B, we're asking them to do things a little bit differently.
Yeah.
So, it's going to have an impact on how they accomplish tasks. We need to be sensitive to that.
Yeah. Well, and so, when you begin working with someone, obviously you need to get buy-in at the leadership level, right? Do you find that there is an age range? We all talk generations now, right? So, I'm now over the hill. You're approaching the top of the hill-ish. Are as you're working with these companies and you're dealing with the 50-year-olds, maybe even the 60-year-olds, but some of their staff are more in the 20, 30, mid-30 range. Do you find more acceptance for some of these new processes in the younger ones, or is it, how is that looking?
I think I've noticed less about a generation or a particular age group and how they want to adopt change, and more about the culture in the business and the mindset of the leadership team and how they want to embrace change.
Okay.
I think if the leadership team is signaling that, we're going to make some changes for some positive, direction. We're doing this for a purpose. There's reason behind it, and we're going to support people through it. But also that the change is important, so we need you to be on board with this.
Right.
That goes further to help the team along than to take a really heavy-handed approach of do this or you're gone, or almost kind of a hands-off approach of, hey, we've got this consultant here, and he's gonna tell you some cool things, and then we'll decide what to do after that. That doesn't work out so well either.
No, for sure. Let's kind of get into a bit of meat and potatoes here. What are some of the common inefficiencies that you're seeing out there right now in some of the people that you're working with? What are the hot ones? It
varies a ton. There is a lot of manually going through and creating a spreadsheet or a document and walking through I'll call it an older process of creating that thing by hand from scratch.
Yeah.
Plugging all that info in, turning it into a PDF, plugging it into an email, stuff that, we can do that. And for one-off stuff you can do, but if it's something that can be standardized and sped up, why not take that workload off of people and let them focus on the decision-making that comes from that?
Yeah, it's funny. One of my favorite saying is, everything we do around here, nothing is bolted to the floor, right? It's that attitude of, well, we've always done it this way, and we don't feel it's broken, so we're going to continue to do it this way. And I know for me, it's been eye-opening. You and I were just sitting down a little bit earlier with Nora going through some of our processes in the bidding. And I looked over at the one point, and I think your eyes were about to pop out of your head, and we had a 5 or 6 step process, and you're like, we can automate it all. But we don't know, right? And so, I think that's one of the most crazy things to me is, we use the Microsoft stack, and we're heavily integrated into Microsoft. And we have thought for years we've been doing it well. And had we not, kind of accidentally somewhat been introduced to you back in December through a company you were subcontracting with, we wouldn't be having these conversations today. I wouldn't have even known where to start. I probably would have continued doing what we've been doing because we didn't feel it was broken. Are there, I'm going to ask, this is kind of a funny question. Are there lots of you out there, or is this where do you even start?
Yeah. And, people with do the sorts of things I do, I think are a little bit hard to find, but they're out there. I think as a group, we're not great at marketing.
Right.
And I'm guilty of it too with my own business, where I could probably be doing more. I could grow my team more if I got the word out a little bit further. Something I probably need to work on as well.
Well, that's fair. And I think also probably one of the things is, we also get in this situation where we hear IT, we often think security, right? Which is a totally, it's connected, but totally different from what you do as well, right? How does IT security play into what you do?
It's a conversation point that comes up all the time because we're working with smaller businesses and they don't necessarily always have access to a sophisticated managed services provider or things like they'll ask questions of us like this, or they're at a point where they're aware of security concerns and they know that, through the work that we've described, that we're doing things to automate. How can we make sure that this system doesn't get used against us if somebody were to access it and essentially turn the system against us or steal data or things like that. So we don't hold ourselves out as security experts, but we've got to be really mindful about it in the work that we do.
Yeah, and I'm sure work with, depending on the company that you're employed with, to work with their IT security company and make sure that no boundaries are getting crossed, right? You hear so many horror stories nowadays about ransomware, about hacking and everything, and it's terrifying.
Yep, and I get why business leaders will be really anxious about it. I can think of one company that I worked with here recently that they were so uptight about it that their internal team's response was to anything new, just say no. We're not going to do anything new.
Right.
And I get it, especially if the internal IT team is really overworked. And all of a sudden, an executive shows up and, hey, we found this consultant and he's going to fix all our problems. And you just need to give him access to the system. And the IT team goes, how in the world can we handle that right now? So sometimes it is some sensitive conversations internally to give them the transparency over what it is that you're proposing to do, what sort of business benefit is coming from it. Here's what we need in terms of access. And have open conversations of here are the attack surfaces that we're opening up by doing this. How can we make sure that the overall security of the organization isn't put at an unacceptable level of risk because of that?
Yeah, that's something gets compromised. When you first start out, somebody contacts Bryan Bates.
Yep.
You want to have a call and find out exactly, what can you offer, basically, right? How do you start working with a small, medium business? What does that look like? I got a call at lunch. We went for lunch earlier, and I got a call, actually from my accountant who said, hey, I've got somebody I want you to talk to. It's a small business owner here in Medicine Hat. He wants to bring in some technology into his business processes. Mm-hmm. Would you be willing to talk to him? Which made me laugh because all of a sudden I'm being played out as this technology expert and I am far from it. But we're doing things a lot of places aren't. But if you could sit here today and say, what does a starting point look like for these small, medium businesses when they want to look at automations and integrations of technology?
Yeah, there's kind of two main things I'm looking for when I have that initial conversation with them is a willingness, or they're experiencing those pain points that maybe automation can address. But B, have they got kind of the basics in order? So Cogitact doesn't hold itself out as a managed services provider. So we're not the people that are, setting up your new email accounts when an employee comes in or turning off the old ones or offering desk side support when you're having troubles with Windows on your computer. There's people that are way better suited to that. And that goes for the entire IT world. There's so many different facets to it that you can't be an expert in all. So we stick to what we know, which is data and automation apps.
Right. Are there barriers? Like if you were, what are the top barriers, I guess, to businesses when they start going down this road?
Barriers for that, it's almost always internal.
Okay.
I think if they're not ready to embrace some different ways of doing things, or if they think somebody can just magically press a button and fix their problems, that's not something we can deliver. we work with the business to come up with solutions, because we want something that A, they're going to adopt, B, that's really going to provide benefit for them.
Yeah.
And we're also trying to identify the most impactful things first. That requires interaction. So if the, executive, a worst case scenario for us would be, dumping us off in front of their team and saying, tell this guy your problems, he's going to fix them. and oh, by the way, there's some big elephants in the room, but we're not going to talk about those.
Yeah, wait, we don't want to bring those up.
No.
Right? And basically handcuffing anybody to actually do any good work.
Yeah, so that's a great way to spend a bunch of money and get very little result for it.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing, I think a lot of time small business think about is cost, right? And do you have an ability to discuss ROI? Like, it's a challenging one, right? Because we've started working together, and not once have I asked you, hey, Bryan, with the work you're doing, what is my return on on my investment in you, right?
Yeah.
Is that something you can even quantify to a business, or does this just exist in this little quagmire of the unquantifiable?
No, it absolutely is quantifiable. So if we, let's say we're working on a process together and we can see how it's getting done right now, we could measure the amount of time it takes or the outcomes from it. And then we can propose to, okay, we're going to change this and this. And we know that is going to save some time, or it's going to let you talk to more customers in a day, or it's going to make it so that you don't have to hire that next team member as soon as you thought you were going to have to hire them, because those are impacts on businesses that go beyond the cost of the licenses and the automation, and so you got to consider it a little bit more holistically than just, hey, does this shave half an hour off of a process? There's more to it, but it absolutely quantifiable.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that I've really appreciated is, as we've worked together over the last few months, is not everything is a 5-alarm fire, right?
Yep.
There's going to be things that you've identified, sometimes accidentally, where it's like, okay, we can do a quick fix on this, and we can really take away some of your pain. I'm going to use, with Nora, with Grassroots Landscaping, the credit cards, right? Mm-hmm. So you sat down with her a few months ago, and we have this great SharePoint site, and we were doing all of our credit card receipts coming in, and it was, because we're working out of town, it was hours and hours and hours of Nora's month in getting all these receipts, if she even got the receipts, and then reconciling everything. And you had an opportunity to sit down with her. Why don't you walk me through what that conversation kind of looked like?
Yeah, and it's interesting because Grassroots already has some stuff built there, and some good stuff.
Right.
And we were able to build upon that. So, that conversation went more along the lines of, okay, show me what you're doing now. And I could see, okay, there's some good things getting done here already. But through a bit of question, answer, observation, Nora and I were able to see that there's some things that are time-consuming tasks for her. They were kind of mind-numbing. They were more, here, click here, change this, save, and then do that again repeatedly. Those are the things that become really ripe for automation. And in that particular case, we were able to do something that added on to what you're already doing, so we didn't have to throw that away, which is nice.
Yep.
And it relieved some of those problems that Nora was spending too much time on.
Yeah. And if you don't mind, how did you relieve those? Yeah, because I kind of laugh about it because, it seemed so simple at the time. I'm like, really, this is what he's going to do? But it ended up being an app.
Yeah. It was just a really straightforward app that you can run on your phone that, in this case, you could take pictures of receipts and have that information flow automatically into the part of the system where receipts were getting approved and sorted for storage and making it into the payable system. And relatively simple app to put together. It, wasn't a big bear. It didn't have to spend 3 months on it.
Yeah.
But it delivered some business impact pretty quickly.
Yeah. And see, that's, I know I've never asked you, hey, Bryan, what's going to be the return on my investment in you? But it was that quick little fix, that low hanging fruit that I was like, all of a sudden I'm looking at that and I'm going, holy smokes. Now, and you know, I can speak because I'm probably one of the biggest users of the app. And I'm collecting more of my receipts. She's seeing more of my receipts. Her time is like insanely down. So, you know, I had a very obvious interaction with what that return on that investment looked like. And it was super cool. And so, you know, as a business owner, you know, what I can tell the people listening to this is, you know, you do have to kind of, I guess, reframe how you're thinking about things, definitely, but also then put some trust in the fact that somebody may come in and do something that you really don't understand, but, you know, it'll have the potential to really be pretty impactful on your business operations. So
yeah, and well, that one's good too, because you had to have several members of your team shift how they were doing things. I think before they were trying to remember to save receipts, bringing them into Nora. She wasn't getting complete sets in the past, and there are some people that probably have not used that sort of app ever on their phone before. That
I know I hadn't.
They embraced it really quickly. They thought it was easy enough to use, easy enough that their old way of doing it was easy to let go of.
Right.
And that's part of the key too.
The other one I kind of laugh about, and it really wasn't anything that, well, it probably did save time, but it saved stress was, and a kind of a funny one was timesheets. You know, every business out there probably struggles with their employees filling out their timesheets, right? And we are not immune to that. And a lot of our timesheets are very impactful for our job costing, potentially for hourly work. So the people doing these approvals were pulling their hair out. And I know it was another thing she shared with you when you two met. And at the end of it, we ended up with you developed or put something in there where a text notification goes out at 7 p.m. every night to the guys. And it's like, have you done your, and we actually were able to create a pretty funny message, right? So, yeah, just those little things are just, it's so easy for you. We don't know they even exist to be able to be done. But it has this huge impact on these people that are inside the business, right?
Yeah, and you're right. Relatively simple to put together something like that. But it changes the process from somebody needs to go and chase down somebody for the missing timesheet that, oops, they forgot, but now they're on the road to the next job and they can't put it in right away, to, hey, the evening, you know, we picked a time of day for these messages to go out when we think, okay, they would have just got home before they get, you know, super settled into everything else. Just a quick little reminder to say, it checks to see if they did submit a timesheet. If they didn't, quick little reminder.
Because that's the other thing. It's if they're done, they don't get anything, right? Yep. So, yeah, it's been kind of fun, and I'll tell you what, it has made everybody's life that was involved in that process so much better. And it's been great. You know, there's nothing worse than having the complaints flowing through about, oh, you know, Jim didn't do his timesheet again today. Meanwhile, somebody's trying to do a work order, can't finish a work order, and you're chasing them in the morning. So that is just another example, I guess, about, you know, something not hugely complex, but hugely impactful to the day-to-day operations of a small business.
And it saves people from having to be in that nagging role. I don't think anybody really likes that at all.
Nope.
And so if we can step aside from that, if we can let the process help the people along to do the things we need done, then great.
Win-win. Absolutely. Yeah. So, Bryan, can you share any of some cool success stories that you've seen and been a part of over the years?
Oh, geez. Yeah, there's, you know, you brought up some good ones already. And I think with every customer that I get to work with, we usually have something along those lines. One that I can think of, this is a company that runs a lot of heavy equipment, and they have maintenance records that they need to keep track of. They had a gorgeous whiteboard in their shop for keeping track of all this stuff. And this is something that lots of people do. Yeah. And for years and years, having that whiteboard, you know, that visual in your face, you know, here's the to-do list. That's a great tool because you can see it. The problem is they also do a lot of stuff that wasn't in the shop. It was out in the field somewhere. Yeah. they needed a way to make the past records available out in the field, because they didn't have access to that unless they literally remember to grab the big accordion file sitting in the shop and bring that with them.
Yeah.
Or, sometimes they don't remember all the machines that they're going to go see. So do we have all the info on those? But, that whiteboard suddenly became something available to them digitally, and they were able to see and track and start to ask questions. What was fun about that one is they started to ask questions about, okay, which machines need their preventative maintenance that are in the same area? They need their preventative maintenance soon. Why don't we go do those at the same time? And they were actually starting to go, okay, well, we need to go visit this machine and this machine. And so we'll make sure we got all the oil filters, all the fluids that machine's going to need, and get it done at the same time. And so stuff like that is, we probably didn't measure the impact enough, but that was pretty impactful for that business.
Yeah, that's crazy. And so, you've been here for almost 2 full days now, working with us, looking through our processes. I got news for you. You just picked on one we hadn't even talked about yet.
Oh boy.
Which was our equipment maintenance. So that's hilarious. And it's part of it because we don't have a quote unquote shop foreman, right? So, everybody that you've sat down with over the last 2 days and talked to and witnessed how they're working, it's the one thing we literally haven't touched on yet. It is a huge part of our business that has been a problem child for years. We don't realize it till winter, because we're a seasonal business. That's when we usually identify, oh yeah, this is still a pain in our what. We just had the luxury of forgetting about it for 7 months. So put that.
We'll write that on the list somewhere.
We'll write that. We'll write it on the whiteboard.
A good example of how a lot of similar problems between businesses. It's you're not alone in that. And I think often probably with what you do, you're not reinventing the wheel every time either. You can take your experiences, probably even from a law firm, and bring those experiences and even some of those processes into a construction business, right? Yeah. Well, your receipt tracking app, that's not the first time we've built a receipt tracking app.
Right.
And we made it custom to fit your process, a lot better. But we've done dozens of those sorts of things before, so we had an idea how it was going to work.
Yeah, and I love it. And so that's kind of those low hanging fruit things, right? Is there a risk of either, depending on the client you're working with, or even people that do what you do in your industry, over engineering things? Like, it's already something not a lot of us understand. Right. So, often you'll be brought into an environment where you're working in something that, number one, people don't understand. Often they're afraid of it, or they just get annoyed by it, because it's just anything we don't know or understand can be very frustrating to us. Right. How do you protect against over-engineering solutions for businesses?
Well, in a few ways. One, it's really tempting in this industry because there's a lot of cool technology to work with, and it's constantly changing to want to try bleeding edge.
And changing quickly,
yes.
Right?
Yeah, it's almost a full-time job keeping up with the changes in the environment. And so it's tempting to go, okay, I want to try something that is the latest, greatest, maybe not even released for production sort of solution here. But there's risks that go with that. Right. And sometimes the risks are really bad. Like, you have promised that it's going to do X, Y, and Z, and the technology fails to deliver on that. We're going to talk about AI, and this is one of the points I bring up about AI frequently, is we're hearing tremendous amounts of stuff that AI is capable of, and the cool factor is certainly there. But there's also a trough of disappointment that goes with it, where it hasn't delivered on everything that every ad has promised. And there's things that we can do really well with AI, and we know through experience, we've tested it. And there's things that it's not quite there yet.
We're not there. Okay, so that's a good segue. It was kind of the next thing we were going to hit on anyways, but let's go into AI. Okay. So obviously we all hear about it. It's in the news. It's everywhere now, right? Whether it's ChatGPT, whether it's, AI managed inboxes, which I am using. how do you manage those conversations in the industry, right? Because it's not necessarily all it's cracked up to be.
Yeah, so it's about managing expectations, absolutely, and it depends where the business is coming from. Where they go, we hear about all these great things. Let's just implement all this cool stuff that we hear about. Just go for it. And what I have to do is bring down the temperature and go, okay, so based on my experience, here's what I've seen works.
Right.
Or B, it's such a rapidly evolving space. To be honest and say, well, we haven't tried it for that use case yet. And when we talk about AI, it's a collection of technologies. It's not one single thing. People think, oh, it's ChatGPT, but that's one piece out of a very big mosaic of technologies that's available. And so we've got to make sure we're applying the right technology against a solution. And is it a solution that's just better done with the tried and true non-AI methods that are already out there?
Yeah, the automations that potentially exist out there. Like an automation isn't AI per se, right? There's those capabilities built into platforms that you can use. One of the things that you and I have recently started talking about is the use of AI bots within our internal system. So what does that look like? Walk the listener through, I guess, what is an AI bot and how can it help their business?
Yeah, it's and rapidly evolving space too, but where one of the most promising business applications for it is to help you better understand the information, particularly that's hidden in documents, how that can be retrieved and used in other parts of your business. So what we're able to do now is you've probably got a collection of documents stored on your system.
Yep.
And maybe you've carefully cataloged them, and maybe you've got some search functionality that helps you go and find maybe a keyword in it. But if you were to ask it a question like, how do I do my employee onboarding process? It might come back and say, well, here's a document I found with the word onboarding in it, but that one might not have anything to do with your employee onboarding process.
Sure.
So what AI is able to do is actually look through the documents and start to correlate your question with what's in those to a higher degree so that it brings back, okay, here's what actually has to do with employee onboarding and serve it up to you. So you don't have to go, digging through your own files to find it.
Yep.
You're asking it to retrieve it and show it to you, and B, giving you something that's even better than a really high context search.
Which is awesome, and I know we're going to explore that a little further, you and I, in my business. What does it look like AI and security, right? So when we talk about an AI bot within a business, everybody probably has used or will use ChatGPT in the near future. I think it's the easiest one to say. Whenever we hear AI, everybody says ChatGPT. But there are security concerns with that as well, right? Like you depending how you have your settings set up, it is using your information to train the model, correct?
Yes.
Yes. That's kind of scary. Yes.
There's massive conversations going on in general IT security spaces around, hey, we know people are already exposing personal and company information into these technologies. What does that mean for the business? Some have taken the very heavy-handed approach of cutting off all access to them.
I know municipalities where it's like their employees are 100% not allowed to access ChatGPT on work computers.
So they just don't do it on their work computers.
I know,
and
right?
They use their personal phone to do it instead.
Workaround.
The workarounds happen.
Yeah.
And so, I think the more pragmatic approach is, okay, how can we do this in ways that protect the data that we have, that we're not exposing things that we should not expose, and that we're doing it in ways that are also bringing back quality, truthful results, because there's been plenty of demonstrations of how AI can.
It's a pleaser, right? It often will just want to tell you what you want to hear. It's kind of funny, actually, and then you're reading it and you're going, well, no, I don't actually think that's right. And when you call it out, It's like, well, yeah, no, yeah, okay. I might have been wrong on that one. It's the weirdest thing. But I have found instances with using it where it's like, it almost just gives you the answer you want to hear at times.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's also using your history from the
Right.
conversations you've had with it in the past when we're talking about a chat tool, an LLM. And so that's influencing it too. So when you ask a particular question, you're going to get a different answer than your coworker asking the same question.
Right, because it's framing it within everything that you have taught it so far about yourself, right?
Yeah.
So if we're implementing, so that's kind of a real quick view of how AI is used in a big context. But if you're bringing it into a business and you're going to bring in some of these AI capabilities into a business, from a business owner standpoint, what are the security issues? Like, are you, if you bring in an AI bot to grassroots, do we have to be concerned that data is getting shared somewhere else?
You should ask the questions to understand better. And so sometimes we want to understand, is that information leaving our boundaries in any sort of way? To understand that to start, are we doing anything? If it's given sensitive information, has it been given guidance on whether to keep working with that or to actually, put some guardrails up and say, no, we're not going to do that. So you deserve to ask questions because, and the people that are implementing it should be able to tell you, here's what it's doing, here's where the information is going, here's why we're doing it this way.
Right.
To make sure that we're not having problems like that.
Yeah. Well, it is a scary thing, especially earlier. What we talked about was IT security and getting hacked and all this. It feels like it's just introducing another way of, without knowing, right, without fully understanding. So yeah, ask questions, definitely. On that note, one thing you had said earlier was LLM. What does that stand for?
Large language model. So ChatGPT is an example.
Okay.
So that kind of AI, the ones that we're hearing about in the news, for the past couple of years.
The race to, be the best LLM, basically, right?
Yeah.
There was something in the news recently. I think it was one that came out of China. You probably know it. I can't remember the name of it now. It's escaping me. But it seems to be this race. It's like, well, we're gonna take over the AI space.
Definitely some big companies throwing a lot of money, and Chinese companies that are maybe upsetting the apple cart a little bit and showing how they can do it for less. Some massive resources getting thrown into that space right now.
Yeah, big time. It's there's a lot of money, that's for sure.
Yeah.
What are, if you were to pick up a few of the challenges or risks around AI in building those integrations into small business, what would be the easiest ones to kind of pick on?
Probably the one we have to watch out the closest for is, unlike other automations where you do a certain set of steps, you will get a very defined answer at the end of it. As soon as you start to inject some AI technology into it, you might get different answers at the end.
Okay.
So this is an example of the same sort of hallucination effect that LLMs are known for doing. But sometimes you can feed it information and it'll come up with answer A today, and tomorrow it might be a slightly different answer. And so that has implications for the quality of data if you're getting different answers. Potentially different answers. So you could be feeding data to an AI to clean it up a little bit. An example might be address data that's coming in very free format. And if instead of cleaning it and putting it into a nice format of street, city, province, postal code, it actually starts to scramble that and put the cities in the postal codes and mess up the street addresses and essentially causing damage to your data set rather than the cleaning that you thought was going to happen. That's a massive negative effect.
Big problem. Absolutely.
Yeah.
How do you control the hype around AI with business owners? Because I brought up right at kind of the start of this where I've sat in enough conferences right now that there's workshops continually at these things about using AI in business. Mm-hmm. And I've seen colleagues and friends walk out of these like, this is the end all and be all. Every business problem that has ever existed is AI, right? So how do you mitigate that hype that's out there, that message that is out there that's getting delivered, and the buy-in from businesses? Because what I fear is there are going to be business owners out there that actually think this is the case, and maybe some of it will solve a lot of their problems. But I view it probably more as a higher probability of thinking it will. They're going to get frustrated it doesn't, and then they're just going to throw the towel in on, and it actually sours any potential relationship with someone like yourself, because they're like, well, I tried it and it's all BS, right?
Yeah, and there's definitely a danger there. I was reading a statistic last week, something along the lines, and sorry, I don't have the quotation for you, but something along the lines of 70% of AI major projects at large companies have been canceled or shut down as failures.
70%.
Yeah, it's a really large percentage. These efforts are not always working out the way people thought they were, and so large sums of money are getting thrown at this. It's not working out. Obviously there's harmed expectations there, and it leads to a distrust of the technology then. At the same time, the capabilities are growing too. And so things that we weren't sure we could do 6 months ago are actually starting to become a little easier to do. So
6 months later.
Yeah.
That's it.
It's moving that fast. So we have to also kind of temper our cautiousness with, okay, let's try something out. Let's try some steps towards it. Let's prove that those work first.
Yeah.
Make sure we've got some good results instead of trying to make the most amazing AI machine ever and then potentially have it fall flat on its face.
Yeah, and then like you said, it just sours any desire on their part to try anything new and exciting.
Yeah.
Right. So on that note, are there any new and exciting tools or processes out there that you're excited to kind of dive into yourself? Like, what are you seeing out there that Bryan's excited to get his hands dirty with?
So, well, I'm watching carefully. So what is, after, the chats and the LLMs, the next step beyond that is what's called an AI agent. So this is something that not only answers questions and brings information back to you and has a conversation, but then is been authorized or given the ability to take actions after that.
Right.
So it might be as simple as a bot that a consumer of your product puts a complaint into your website, and it looks at it and tries to start mediating that complaint. Which you can see the risk of that. If okay, is this thing
just crazy to me?
Or maybe it kicks off a process based on information coming in from the customer. So agents are basically bots or LLMs that are able to start taking actions on based on what's come in, and it isn't as simple as what would be, you don't press a button on the website or say start up an account, and it has to be those exact keywords. It can be a little more like, hey, I'm want to know things about your product first before I buy. What does it cost? Can I buy it in a store? These sorts of things. And it could have that conversation with them. And maybe the conversation progresses to the point where the customer's like, yeah, I'll sign up. And then it takes them into that sign up process.
Have you had a conversation yet with AI? Intentional. Like we've probably all had them unintentionally, right? For sure. Because we've all been on like the little chat bots and
like to be duped by AI?
No, like have you actually I've known guys, and again, we're going to go with ChatGPT, that as they're driving, they will actually have a conversation with ChatGPT, like they are literally a person in their vehicle.
Okay. I haven't gone there yet, and maybe it's because I've seen enough hallucinations to know that weird stuff's going to happen.
Right.
But what has been fun, and I think fun from a professional development perspective, is we're putting lots of stuff into ChatGPT, for example. So it's keeping a bit of a history of conversations.
Yeah.
We can go back and ask it a question of, based upon my history, start to ask maybe tough questions about, hey, what do you think as a skill? What's a skill I need to work on next, based on what you know about me? And it will give you an answer. And sometimes the answer is uncomfortably true.
Yeah, you actually, I'm not going to ask you to repeat this exactly, but you had Michelle and I type something in, and it was, I can't remember. Do you remember what exactly that
I think
was?
It was asking to kind of do a strategic analysis on, your ability as a manager or something, and to, kind of give you push you towards some setting of goals to become that next level of manager. And
it was creepy. Like it was like, when it's one thing when you're using these platforms to just kind of help you out, but when you actually, in that sense, asked it to analyze you as an individual, and it was like eerily on the mark. And that kind of frightens. Are you afraid of AI? Like, you think about it, everything we're hearing is like the biggest threat to humanity is AI. Are you afraid of AI? Are you afraid of what it could potentially do to?
I'm afraid of being duped by AI. And a few weeks ago, I had a bit of a gut check moment. I was testing out an automation where it would look at a person's calendar and prepare a summary based on that calendar. Okay. And I had been doing it inside what I thought was a safe firewall of, okay, it's going to access one of my calendars. And all of a sudden, it at the time started coming back with information that seemed like it was in the calendars of people I had connected to recently. And so I have this panic moment of, how did it get past a wall here?
Right.
This is supposed to be just my data. It looks like it is bringing me data
from others,
from other people. Has it somehow breached their calendars? And after that moment of panic, and I reached out to some experts. Yeah, I wasn't going for the power plug or anything yet, but I had to have that moment of, okay, what's really going on here? And then, okay, so I'm going to test it in a few different ways and start to peel at what's going on here to see, is it truly reaching in other people's calendars without their consent?
Without their knowledge.
Yeah. And thankfully, it looked like it was actually just a really sophisticated hallucination based upon people, that the model incorporates documents from so many different places, so many different people, that it had made things that looked eerily like what I might have seen from an email contact. Enough that
that's terrifying.
It concerned me. And thankfully it wasn't the case, but
no kidding,
but definitely a gut check moment.
Enough to put some fear in you and some panic. That's for sure. That is wild. And that is pretty terrifying when you think about this. It makes me think, I don't even know if you're older. You ever remember the movie War Games?
Oh yes.
So, that was kind of, you think about it, and I know Levi's in the room right now. There's no way he knows what we're talking about. You do know. Oh, nice. Perfect. So War Games, like, I don't even know what decade that had to be.
83, maybe?
That was like, I think about it now, that was like the first introduction into what AI could be, right? Mm-hmm. And hilarious. So hopefully we don't ever get to that part where 1983, there we go. Good job. There you go. Hopefully we don't have a computer deciding to push nuclear buttons, sending missiles across the ocean.
I think there's still a lot of people looking over their shoulder, and they've watched the Terminator movies, and there's that talk about what happens when the AI becomes self-aware, and decides that humans aren't necessary anymore, and maybe we should just get rid of them.
Right.
It's those are tough thoughts to grapple with, because we're working with this fascinating technology that maybe has crossed that threshold already. We just
I find it just challenging, because like I'm kind of all in on all this, and maybe I'm not that interesting of a person. So if somebody wants to steal something on me, I guess, go ahead. You want to learn more on Randy Volk, go learn more on Randy Volk. But we'll see where the future goes.
And maybe this is some sort of weird faith on my part, is I'm polite to AI.
don't be mean to it. It might be mean back to you.
But, I guess I don't want to, if ChatGPT is going to make a list one day of the humans that are allowed to stay and the humans that are allowed to go, I kind of want to be on the...
You're not the first person that's told me that, actually, which is really, really funny. That in fact, I had friends over a while ago, and one of them said, I caught myself saying thank you. Are you that far along that you're actually saying thank you to ChatGPT?
And maybe because it's brought out that humanness in us, it's that connection. Some people find really deep connection with some of these LLMs, and so it's bringing that out, and maybe a little bit of civility, a bit of politeness.
Maybe you can teach us a few things, right? But kind of sad, we'll probably be politer to a chat bot than we would to the actual person sitting across from us. So, hopefully that's not the case. If we could just circle back a minute back to the IT automations and integration side of things. Where do you see things going? You said earlier, like, I can't remember what it was, but there was a 6-month window between when something wasn't possible and now it's starting to become possible. Where do you see integrations and automations going in your world with small business over the next couple of years?
I see it going in a really interesting place, and it might be as soon as the next 5 years. So we're right now used to, when you start up an app or go to a web page, you start it up, you might put some information in or click on some things and hit a button to do something. That's the user interface. You do some clicks, things happen. I think as LLMs like ChatGPT and similar AI technologies become more integrated with that, there's going to be a lot more, it's your voice and your language that interact with the apps. So it's going to become a little more natural and conversational like that. And at the same time, some of the back-end programming is also going to be done very, very similarly.
Right.
It's less going to be code that can be difficult for a layperson to understand. It's going to be more understandable by them, but there's still going to be nuance to it too. So there's the systems, the back end systems are going to start looking more like the front end systems in terms of, hey, we're using everyday English to accomplish a lot of this stuff.
Cool.
Exactly how that plays out, I'm not sure yet, but I can see.
To be determined.
Yeah,
right?
The building blocks are starting there.
Yeah. Last question I want to ask you, with the work that you're doing, the experience you have, are you excited about where business can go when they start really leaning in to how some of these technologies can propel their business when it comes to growth or scaling or even just day-to-day existence?
For sure, because I've firsthand seen the impact on businesses that it can have. So, a few years ago, I was working with a law client. There was a small team at the time, and they were handling, a substantial amount of work when they were doing things manually. The team was quite busy. After that, their workload grew. It was probably close to 5 to 7 times, but they only had to double their team size in order to keep up with it.
That's crazy.
I guess the thing they struggle with now is their workload continues to grow. We can only wring so much out of the automation sponge before we've got to start looking at other things. But, it's also fun and challenging to look at what might those next things be.
So if you are a company that's looking to grow or scale, can you do it well without technology playing an active part in that in today's market from what you see?
Yeah, I don't believe this is like an absolute required thing for all businesses.
Yeah.
But if there are things that need to be repeated, things that humans really have to concentrate on getting the quality just right, and that involves them interacting with different apps, in this day and age, it seems like it's hard to find a business that wouldn't benefit from that, but I'm not just going to say every business needs to do all of these things.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that makes sense, definitely. But that being said, I can speak firsthand and say I would encourage any business, if you are at all interested in scaling or growing, like, look for some help on this.
For sure. And I think you'll find a lot of people are open to a conversation to talk about what does exist out there. One of the big things is businesses just don't know what is available.
They don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
Right. So,
so even just a conversation about what some of the possibilities might be, it could help them decide.
Yeah, for sure. Bryan, I want to thank you for your time today. I also want to thank you just for providing clarity in a really confusing space. for a lot of people. I hope that the audience gets something out of this where maybe they can move forward with a little bit more trust in how they're going to execute on things. Also want to thank you for the work you're doing with us with Grow and GRL. And I know for myself, I'm looking forward to many, many more months and years of seeing where we can take this IT strategy. So
You're very welcome. We're having fun. We're learning lots. Those are the most important things.
as long as we can keep your eyeballs popping out of your head, we're having fun. I'm having fun doing it. So it means we're going in the right direction. Right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Anyways, thank you again for coming.
Thank you.